Hey out there, music fans. It's me, Nick Cicada, your freewheeling and dealing music journalist here with a very important list that I'm honestly surprised I haven't made yet. My top 100 favorite albums of all time. That's right, the next couple videos I'm going to be going over my 100 favorite all-time albums. There's going to be 4 entries in this series, each one with 25 albums in it. And we're going to work from 100 all the way up to 1. Just to let you know how this is going to work, I define a good album as usually the best album in a band's discography. And to qualify for this list, a very important detail is that the album has to have at least 2 good songs. Like, there are some albums from bands and musicians on here that there are other albums by the same band with a better song on it, but because that song is like the only good part of the entire album, I put an album with 2 songs that aren't quite as good but do carry the album more, because what this list aims to do is talk about albums that can be listened to all the way through as a complete experience, not just the singles. You can listen to these albums completely all the way through in their entirety. So if you have a vinyl or cassette, just pop it on and listen to the whole flippin' thing, because these are good as cohesive narrative projects. They tell interesting stories and they respect albums as an art form. Not just singles, not just individual songs. They really respect track listings and composition and ordering and stuff like that. Another thing I should note is that I've tried to diversify this list as much as possible. I have a very wide-ranging, eclectic taste in music. I'm not particularly a rock fan or a hip-hop fan. I listen to all kinds of shit, all kinds of wacky stuff. I do tend to aim sort of more towards new wave and electronic these days, but there's quite a few good hip-hop albums and decent rock albums on here, even a couple folk tossed in. So I tried to make this list as diverse and extensive as possible, toss in as much variety as I could, and in doing so I created another rule that every band can't have more than 2 albums on the list, even if I really like them, even if they have like 3 albums or 4 albums that I think are winners, that they can only be limited to 2 albums just so I can get everything on here. And even then, there's probably 100 more albums that I've forgotten about and will kick myself for years for forgetting to put on this list, but maybe those could make another video sometime. I should say that there isn't any metal. I don't generally listen to metal. I don't generally listen to emo. There's one album on here that could be technically considered emo. I think you know which one I'm talking about. But I don't listen to emo, I don't listen to metal, I don't listen to depressing music generally, because I sort of use listening to music as a substitute for recreational drugs to put me in a good fucking mood. And the last thing I need is music that is just about breakups and sad shit and suicide and everything. I like happy shit. I like happy, fun shit. That's maybe the most unifying aspect of the music that I personally enjoy. It's gotta be fun, it's gotta be light. Not necessarily light. I mean, it can be heavy fun, it can layer on the fun, but I just don't like depressing shit. I don't like listening to depressing music. So, yeah. Okay, all that out of the way, let's just get right the flip into it. This is my top 100 albums of all time. At 100, we've got Electric Light Orchestra, Out of the Blue. Electric Light Orchestra is one of those outfits that doesn't get as much cred these days, but they really have a very unique sound. I often hear them called the Beatles of the 70s. I would have to disagree. By the way, of course, there are no Beatles or Beach Boys albums on this list because I listen to real rock and roll. ELO is better than the Beatles, and I really like the album cover to Out of the Blue. It perfectly conveys this sort of like weird, distant, but also strangely close and warm and fuzzy vibe that this album gives off. So many flippin' hits on here. This is a must-listen album of the 1970s, and you should absolutely check it out. ELO are pioneers of the rock game. So much of the technique they come up with on this album is copied by later groups and stuff, but they had a pretty strong run, quite a while, and they are like seriously underrated in terms of 70s rock. So yeah, give Out of the Blue a listen. Not much more to it than that. Okay, at 99, we got Aerosmith with Toys in the Attic. I really like the cover to Toys in the Attic. The evil teddy bear and frog and shit, and they're all climbing out of the toy box like some kind of fucking demented Toy Story. And every song on here perfectly conveys that vibe. Like you're discovering some kind of insane relic in the attic that you forgot about. Oh my gosh, wow, this is fantastic. And Aerosmith really bring the heat. Aerosmith is, of course, a great band. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. You know how great Aerosmith is. They guest starred on Wayne's World once, and they really bring the cred with Toys in the Attic. A lot of people, myself included, consider Toys in the Attic their magnum opus, and I don't think that's too controversial a statement. There are some who would say that stuff before or after is better, but I think Toys in the Attic is really that sweet spot. Sweet emotion. Aerosmith lays out the blueprint on Toys in the Attic for everything that a rock star of the glam and metal era should be, and I really like the vibe that this album gives off. They got Walk This Way. So many jams on Toys in the Attic. It's one of those rock albums that never gets old. I can see why Aerosmith is so popular and why they have such a lasting legacy. They're frickin' great. Okay, at 98 we have Weezer with the Blue Album. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like most of Weezer's shit beyond the Blue Album. Everyone says Pinkerton is great. I don't get the appeal. Why would I listen to an album full of depressing shit when there's the album full of fun, poppy, cheery shit right next to it that's better because it was the first one? Why the fuck am I gonna listen to Pinkerton? I popped on Pinkerton once and I didn't even like it. And everything after Pinkerton is just a complete sellout move on Weezer's part, so I think we're well beyond the point where Weezer will ever make anything good. But for what it's worth, I flippin' like the Blue Album. If nothing else, Weezer is a band that started with some serious potential and they just kind of went down a trajectory of ass, but I like Say It Ain't So. I used to think Say It Ain't So was on Pinkerton because that song's kind of dark, but no, it's just on the Blue Album. All the good Weezer songs are on the Blue Album. Undone, Buddy Holly. I really like the music video where Weezer is superimposed into Happy Days. That shit's hilarious. And I think the Sweater Song is an iconic music vid with some great production, excellent camera work, and just a wonderful vibe all around. It's a mood, yo. So yeah, in terms of just like setting the bar for what rock could have been, I think the Blue Album shows a fascinating insight into like what Weezer could have done if they just maintained their integrity and didn't make like Beverly Hills and Feels Like Summer and all this complete crap for the past 20 years. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get a Weezer album this good. But even at their best, Weezer isn't that great or anything. It's still not exactly my cup of tea, but I can give them the cred where they deserve it, hence their inclusion on the list. At 97, we've got Paul Simon with There Goes Rhymin' Simon. I know some people prefer Simon and Garfunkel. I think Paul Simon works great on his own, and I never really cared for the duo stuff. But damn, can Paul Simon make some great freaking solo work. He made Graceland, You Can Call Me Al. But I like There Goes Rhymin' Simon because much as the cover suggests, is a very cohesive arrangement of just a couple chill, laid-back, relaxed tunes of Paul Simon relaying various aspects of his life, from his passion for photography on Kodachrome to One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor. I really like Paul Simon's abilities as a singer-songwriter. There are a lot of musicians these days who like brand themselves as a singer-songwriter, but Paul Simon, man, he's the real fucking deal. And Kodachrome is a great song. It plays in Coneheads, in the scene where the Coneheads are growing up, and I really like it. I really like Kodachrome, but every song on here is a banger. Again, you know, these albums should be appreciated as cohesive products. So listen to this one all the way through. It's very pleasant, it's very fun, and Paul Simon really brings the heat on his own as a solo act. Okay, at 96, we got Mr. Bungle, California. Mr. Bungle had to show up on here somewhere, but I don't really like Disco Volante or the self-titled. I can be in the mood for them sometimes, but you have to be in the mood for them. Whereas California, I'm always in the mood to pop on some Bionic Vapor 2, The Golden Boy, or None of Them Knew They Were Robots or shit, because these songs fucking bang. These songs slap so hard, and it's very weird to think that Mr. Bungle even made them, because some of them display so much technique and like just complete respect for the genres that they're attempting to emulate. Difficult to believe they're the same bunch who made Disco Volante and all that stuff. Again, Mr. Bungle is extremely versatile. They have a reputation and a knack for that. But what they're able to pull off on California is just fantastic. Hence, it's my favorite Mr. Bungle album, hands down. You get all the variety you expect from Mr. Bungle, but you also get this very cohesive, tight arrangement, and it feels like they're talking about a very specific point in time in a very specific place. And that's just fantastic. There's so much esoteric lyricism on display here. Vanity Fair. It's talking about the frickin' like Russian eunuchs and shit. It's amazing. It's a great album with a very, very, very unique sound, and just a great, great release from Mr. Bungle here. I fucking love California. Not the state. I have a deep-seated disdain for the state of California, but the album California by Mr. Bungle, that's what's happening. Okay, at 95, we got LCD Sound System. This is happening. Everyone seems to like LCD Sound System. They're one of those sort of nostalgic groups, I guess, particularly for millennials, because they were one of the biggest groups of the 2000s, which was a pretty lackluster period, all things considered. With This Is Happening, LCD Sound System manages to perfectly imitate the Talking Heads, which I'm not too big into. Like, it does just sound like a ripoff of the Talking Heads throughout, but even then, I like the Talking Heads sound so much that even if this album is highly derivative, and it sounds a lot just like a worse version of the Talking Heads, like maybe like Naked quality, I can't diss this album. I mean, it's still freaking good. I like Drunk Girls. That's kind of a bop. I really like every song on this album, not just Drunk Girls. Like, all of them are pretty dang good and display a lot of technical prowess. And the main guy from LCD Sound System is very versatile with his voice. He does a lot of like wavering, kind of a spastic David Byrne type delivery. It's not quite as good as David Byrne, but really, as the number one Talking Heads imitators, I do have to give LCD Sound System credit. They are able to really capture that sort of vibe. And this is a fun album that you can listen to all the way through, and you probably won't be bored once. It's a pretty happening album with a lot going for it. I can see why people have sort of gravitated towards it in recent years and wanted more out of LCD Sound System, because I think they're a worthwhile group. For what it's worth, yeah, I don't dislike them. There's some pretty good album here. Okay, at 94, we got the only album that could be considered an emo album. Pretty dang low on the list, because I don't like emo-type music. Green Day, American Idiot. I don't consider this an emo album. I just consider this a rock album. I just consider Green Day a rock band. Some people call them an emo band. I don't buy into that. But American Idiot is great. It's the best album ever made about the Bush administration. It's the best album made about the mid-2000s and the sort of cultural lag that went on there. And I really like American Idiot as a concept album. It should be listened to in full, because you get such a bigger picture, such a more nuanced picture with the full story of Jesus of Suburbia and St. Jimmy and all that than you do just listening to American Idiot. American Idiot as a song alone is a fucking jam, and Green Day delivers. But a piece like Jesus of Suburbia is amazing in that it's extremely long and drawn out, but it never once feels boring. It's just Green Day walking around the 7-Eleven, trashing the shit out the place, offering a unique insight into a time that no longer exists, and I can't fault American Idiot. I see why people like American Idiot. I see why people miss the old Green Day. I see why people are like, damn, what happened to these guys? Where'd they go wrong? They used to be putting out material of this caliber. Yeah, American Idiot, it really is a must listen. It's one of the greatest political type albums of all time. It has a deep statement about alienation of the modern youth. Not the modern youth anymore, but Gen X and millennials. and it's worth listening to for that reason. American Idiot gets a thumbs up seal of approval for me, yo. Okay, at 93 we have Stereo MCs with Connected. This is an underrated album. Stereo MCs is a British group specializing in catchy dance tracks, and the titular track Connected was featured in the Angelina Jolie movie Hackers. It was a bop, so I looked this whole album up, and it turns out not just the Connected song is good, the whole album is good. This is an extremely good dance album with a lot of variety, a crazy good production value, just like a very cool aesthetic to it too, one that doesn't really exist so much anymore, a very sort of 90s dancey aesthetic that you'd hear in a nice club, and it's very classy too. It's very refined and smooth. It's not like like hard cocaine rave shit. It's like, I ain't gonna go blind. Such a nice, choppy, like smooth ass production on this. It's immaculate from start to finish. You will feel like you're just cruising along. It's like a wide open highway. It's really good. I really like the Stereo MCs. I think they're underrated. I do, and hence their inclusion on this list. Hopefully you'll go and listen to Stereo MCs Connected. At 92 we got Sugarloaf, the self-titled album by Sugarloaf. Giving a Denver band some due cred here, I really like Sugarloaf. I didn't think much of them when I first heard that, oh, they were the Denver band. Most Denver bands aren't really from Denver. No, these guys are the real fucking deal. This was the staple Denver band. This was the formative Denver band. These were the guys who put Denver on the fucking map back in the hard rock era and cut some seriously good shit. The debut album is really the only one worth listening to. It's got some seriously good output, and the Wikipedia page says, oh, side 2 is instantly forgettable. It's not that bad. It's pretty fucking good. It lives up to the standards of other similar songs from the time period, and I think Jerry Corbetta and the bunch deserve way, way more credit than they get for just like making great fucking Denver hard rock, and I guess it's kind of psych rock too, mostly like hard rock. These guys are the fucking Rolling Stones of Denver, and they don't get nearly enough credit. They're pretty low on the list. There are 2 Denver albums actually further down, but I'd be remiss not to put Sugarloaf at least on the list. It is well worth a fucking listen, and it gives a great idea too if you're wondering what Denver music is. Listen to Sugarloaf. That's Denver music for you. Denver vibes all the way through. Okay, at 91, we got Gorillaz with Demon Days. I'm not too big into the Gorillaz. I don't really like the whole virtual band aspect. It feels sort of gimmicky, and I find the cartoons somewhat annoying at times. The music, for the most part, is really high quality, but I had to put Demon Days here just because it has all my favorites on it. Dirty Harry, Feel Good Inc., and Dare. Dare is on here. And the music videos for all 3 are fantastic. I don't really think the first one or Plastic Beach are quite as good. I do feel like Gorillaz, especially with Song Machine. Song Machine was good and kind of returned to form, but I think Demon Days is sort of the peak, and you should definitely check Demon Days out if you haven't. You don't necessarily need to watch the music videos. Just listen to the music. It's a pretty cool, technical little extravaganza on display here. I like Dare because it's kind of disco infused, and then Dirty Harry's got that interesting chorus of child voices. We ain't got to do. And then you got Feel Good Inc., Gorillaz' most famous song with De La Soul. And there's so much variety here. Gorillaz obviously is known for like the weird genre mashup shit that they do. And for what it's worth, I think Damon Albarn and the bunch really come together with some serious fire with Demon Days. So I get why Gorillaz are respected. Much like Weezer, not one of my favorite bands, but I'd be remiss not to give them at least a spot. So there you go. Alright, at 90 we got the Rolling Stones with Beggar's Banquet. I had to put one Rolling Stones album on here, and it was difficult because a lot of them suffer from the thing where they just have one really great song and then a lot of filler, which was kind of common practice with some rock albums back in the day. But Beggar's Banquet is easily the Rolling Stones' most conceptually intricate. It deals with hard-hitting themes of philosophy, obviously good versus evil, and that whole sort of thing. And you get the idea that Mick Jagger and the bunch are very enlightened, and they're trying to inform you about some deeper message. The very title itself, Beggar's Banquet, is sort of deep and multi-layered and multi-textual. So I would say Beggar's Banquet is the deepest album of the Rolling Stones, and it's got Sympathy for the Devil, which is just a bop. But other than that, it is a wonderful listening experience through and through, and you should check it out and give it a listen. It's a great piece from beginning to end in its entirety. So yeah, I figured I should give the Rolling Stones some cred. They're actually not my favorite British invasion band. I like The Who and the Kinks more, so spoiler warning, they're above the Rolling Stones. But I'd be remiss not to give the Rolling Stones spot number 90 at least. Okay, at 89 we got Kid Cudi with Speeding Bullet to Heaven. I fucking like this album. I really like it. Man of the Night, Confused, the Beavis and Butthead skits. It's all fucking fantastic. I can't believe when Speeding Bullet to Heaven came out, some people didn't like it. You only wouldn't like it if you've been living in a hip-hop climate for so long that one rapper comes out with a rock album and you're like, oh, I don't like this sucks. Furthermore, I like Kid Cudi's foray into rock way more than I like Tyler the Creator's foray into rock, which feels very gimmicky. There's no Tyler the Creator on this list. I'm not so big into Tyler the Creator. Holy shit, when Kid Cudi does rock, it feels so sincere, it feels so genuine, it feels like he has a deep-seated respect and understanding for grunge music and the whole 90s vibe. This came out on cassette. I wish I could get a fucking cassette of Speeding Bullet to Heaven, because Kid Cudi's like, that's its true form. It's meant to be listened to on cassette. I gotta nab me one of those fucking Speeding Bullet to Heaven cassettes. It is such a great album. And I don't even like Kid Cudi's rap stuff. Like, it's okay. He is a really good rapper, but he's great at just putting out weird, fun, interesting rock songs. I don't even get, like, depressed or anything like Confused, but Confused is so catchy. It's so great, well-composed a song that I can't help but fucking jam out to it. It's just that good. What Kid Cudi's able to do with the frickin' guitar on this thing is beyond belief. It's fucking amazing. I have no idea why this had a negative reception. And Tyler the Creator gets a positive reception when he comes out with rock, but now let's shit on Kid Cudi. Nonsense. Speeding Bullet to Heaven's a fucking masterpiece. One of the best of the 2010s. Listen to Speeding Bullet to Heaven. Okay, keeping on. Swan, Soundtracks for the Blind. This is the only entry on the list that I guess is what you'd probably term Mewcore, is because it's very popular, it's recommended to death. Swans, however, is really the only group that I can see why people recommend it so much. Pretty damn good, and I can see why Soundtracks for the Blind is so often recommended as an entry point to the group, because it's fun. It's a little dark at points, it gets a little angsty, but you're always reassured with the thought that every single new song is going to be completely different from the last one, so it's like, just keep listening, and you're going to have your ears bombarded with constant novelty, which, yeah, I don't like depressing shit, but at least if the depressing shit is constantly new, and it's constantly, like, fucking interesting, and there's something always going on, it's like, yeah, you know, I can take this. I like Soundtracks for the Blind. It has some very, very unique, creepy, wild vibes. It's a strange listening experience. My favorite track is Blood Section, because it's just kind of happy, but yeah, the subtext obviously is that someone's arm is being cut off and shit, and they're bleeding the fuck out, but it's like a happy little bagpipe tune. Da 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 da. That's my favorite song off the whole album, but there's a lot, you know, Yum Yum Killers, Volcano, and fucking Mellow Thumb. All great compositions in their own right, and you should listen to this album at least once all the way through. If you don't like it, you don't like it, but if you do like it, hey, you found something you like, so there you go. Okay, at 87 we got April March with Chick Habit. I like Yee Yee. Yee Yee is an underrated genre, as are most French things. I like Yee Yee in that it's an inherently feminist genre. It got a lot of gals back in the 60s into prominence, and I am fascinated by April March for her Yee Yee revival, and I think Chick Habit is a catchy as fuck tune, but the entire album, Chick Habit, is well composed from start to finish, and April's adherence to using the French language and creating songs in both English and French that translate really well, that's extremely admirable. Sound is so period accurate. This sounds like some classic Yee Yee shit. I don't like Ren and Stimpy. I know that April March had some dealings with John Kay, but she's way more talented than frickin' John Kay ever was. I mean, the April March discography is hella underrated. Recently she had the Incinerama album, which was very good, top tier Kino as they say, and I cannot recommend listening to Chick Habit all the way through, both the English versions and the French versions. It is a very, very cool album, and I recommend hanging up your Chick Habit and going to listen to Chick Habit, because it's just that freaking good. I like April March, I like her aesthetic, I like the vibe she gives off. She's a very classy gal, and her songs are absolute bomb sauce to the max. Hella underrated. Okay, at 86 we have Harry Nilsson, The Point. I think this is a fun album. If you go in with an open mind, it has a very unique sound, and of course it's the soundtrack to the classic ABC cult special of the same name, which you should probably watch, but I'd also recommend listening to the album, because what Harry Nilsson's able to achieve here is undoubtedly the pinnacle of his career. This is the best stuff Harry Nilsson ever put out, and the story told is fantastic. The Point is a good example of a concept album in that every single song ties into the overarching narrative, which is interesting, captivating, tells a complete story from start to finish that is very, very cool. And very little like this has even been attempted since to create like this elaborate fucking fairy tale out of nothing. I can only really compare The Point to like The Wizard of Oz in terms of great musical fantasy pieces. But those who know it seriously know it, and I'd be remiss not to recommend this somewhere within this list. So there you go. It's some of the best 70s folk type stuff that you're ever likely to hear, and Harry Nilsson is one heck of a composer. He really lays it down thick here. Okay, at 85 we got the White Stripes with Elephant. I'm not so big into the White Stripes either. Their non-elephant stuff doesn't really get me all that much, but I like Elephant. Most of the songs on here are some pretty nice throwback rock type stuff, even if it doesn't exactly sound like what it's going for all the time. I like Ball and Biscuit. I like a lot of the ones on here, and I think the White Stripes' adherence to just having a guitar and a drum and Jack White's vocals, it's interesting. It does seem kind of gimmicky, like most rock songs can benefit from more than two instruments, and it gets kind of repetitive and boring after a little while, but then you notice like the technical proficiency Jack White's got going on. He is one of the greatest living guitarists of our time after all. Soundscapes he's able to create with just Meg White's drum kit and his guitar are pretty freaking cool if you think about it. So for what it's worth, I do think Elephant is worth listening to, maybe just once, but maybe some of these tunes will start to grow on you and you'll come to kind of appreciate them. I certainly have to a certain extent, but like I said, nothing outside Elephant has really grown on me. I'm not a big White Stripes type of guy, but I can see why they have their fans. They're pretty talented. Okay, at 84 we got Nine Inch Nails with the Downward Spiral. This is yet another great example of an album that really should be listened to in full, but everyone just listens to the main song, Closer, and doesn't pay any attention to the other great shit on here. But this is a great album that perfectly captures the slow descent of this maniac as he just ruins his life completely with drugs and sex and hedonism. And I feel like that sometimes. I feel like I'm a bit of an indulgenist, Yeah, it's some relatable shit. This isn't exactly like an extremely emo album or anything. It's very, very good trend-setting industrial shit. And I get why Pretty Hate Machine has its fans, but it's a much more formative, rough sound. The Downward Spiral is really where Nine Inch Nails comes into their own. You go, this is Trent fucking Reznor, and he's here to get angsty and start in on some fire shit and go, oh yeah, I'm Trent Reznor and I'm doing drugs and I wanna fuck you like an animal, yo. Da 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 da. And yeah, I like the Downward Spiral. It's a fun listen, and you should listen to it from the beginning to the end because it'll be so different than if you just listened to Closer. They're completely different experiences. Closer is so different and striking in context. Another great example of an album that should absolutely be listened to in its entirety. Moving on. At 83, we got the Electric Six with Fire. This is another example of one of those late-era rock albums that I can't help but respect in a certain capacity, because the Electric Six, while they might not be exactly my cup of tea, do have a very unique, distinct, recognizable sound. And on Fire, you'll hear everything you need to know about the Electric Six. Improper dancing and Dance Commander and all this shit. So many songs about dancing, so many songs about fire. That's why it's called Fire, because fire is mentioned in every song. I just find their weird mix of like disco and hard rock and glam rock and shit. It's so weird. There's no other band quite like the Electric Six, but I'd be lying if I said that their songs aren't fucking catchy and awesome and just like give off this vibe of I'm here to party and I don't give a shit and it's time to fucking dance like in the improper fashion if you catch the drift. There's just something like very self-aware and goofy and cheesy, but also like very respectable about what the Electric Six attempted. And I don't think any Electric Six album after this is really worth listening to, but Fire is Fire. It just is. It's as simple as that. Okay, 82. I Don't Know How But They Found Me with Razzmatazz. Yeah, I'm putting I Don't Know How But They Found Me, Razzmatazz, on this list. It might be the newest album on the list. Actually, that's not true, but I do remember living through the album release cycle of this back when I Don't Know How were considered like the hot new shit. And I remember this album being marketed to hell and back. It was like every YouTube ad for like a year straight. For what it's worth, these songs fucking slap. Leave Me Alone, New Invention, Razzmatazz, they're all really fucking cool. I like the unique sound I Don't Know How has. I like the attention to like vintage technology. The music videos, holy shit, they're cool. It's just these walls of vintage computers and shit, and they're like standing in front and getting plugged in, and it's fucking amazing. Maybe not the music so much. I mean, the music is kind of generic and basic and doesn't even really capture like the vibe of like vintage electronic or anything. But the music videos on their own are fucking fantastic. I really, really like them. They have a cool look to them. Now that I Don't Know How is just a solo project, I don't know if it'll be as good. I think it worked mainly on the basis of there being at least two guys to it. I don't think the tracks that have been released since Razzmatazz are as good, but this is a damn promising debut, and I really like what I Don't Know How brought to the table for a little while. It felt fresh, it felt interesting, it felt like good science fiction based music, and as a big time science fiction fan, I'm a sucker for that shit. And their aesthetic is so unique too. There are a lot of nostalgia-based acts, but I Don't Know How is the only one I've seen that like really manages to capture that kind of like dated 90s type edge. Like I guess they're going for more of an 80s type edge, because I Don't Know How is a quote from Doc Brown. Awesome quote too. I mean, that's a great thing to name your fucking band after. I Don't Know How But They Found Me. Great Scott. Yeah, every music video by I Don't Know How I'd recommend watching. They're very, very cool. And Razzmatazz is a fun album. Fun shit. At number 81, we got Rage Against the Machine with Evil Empire. Evil Empire is the best Rage Against the Machine album. I'm just gonna say it. I don't think Debut or Renegades or any of those really managed to match the fantastic precedent set by Evil Empire. There is not a dull moment on this thing. It's just Zach De La Rocha and Tom Morello just going boom, 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 boom. It's fucking hard hitting and takes you by the collar and just chokes you out and just like boom, 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 boom. Every second is just relentless fucking hard hitting social critique and shit. They're raging against the machine like total bastards on this thing, just front to back. It's amazing. I really like it. It's not as rough as the debut. It's not as boring as their later stuff. I mean, what am I saying? They only got a couple albums, but Evil Empire is absolutely the best. Like, I don't even think that's a controversial take or anything. Most people would agree that Evil Empire is where they really, really hit their stride in terms of just like completely raging non-stop like crazy. This is wacky music for wacky deranged minds, but I cannot recommend it enough. Okay, at 80 we got Yes, Fragile. This is my favorite Yes album, not just because they're Roundabout, although of course being a prog rock album, Roundabout is like a really long track and all the tracks are stretched out to tons of time. There's the one with Owner of a Lonely Heart, there's Close to the Edge, but when it comes right down to the wire, if I have to pick a favorite Yes album that I just enjoy listening to in full, it's Fragile. It's Fragile because Fragile, as the title suggests, has a very fragile sound. It's like listening to a glass palace. It's like this very beautiful, intricate thing that is reflected in the album artwork. This nice watercolor of just like a planet. My gosh. Every track on Fragile is a bop, and some of the best prog rock ever released. Most people put this as like their second after Close to the Edge, but I'm putting it first because it's got Roundabout, and I know what else the fuck you want out of Yes. It's like their best track. I mean, I guess Owner of a Lonely Heart is, but again, you know, I'm judging these albums on just like how good they are as a full listen. And as a full listen, I have to say Fragile. It's a wonderful album. Moving on, speeding right through these things, we got Cypress Hill, Black Sunday. Whoa, Nelly, what a freaking banging hip-hop release here. I'm big into Cypress Hill, and there aren't really any albums from Cypress Hill that I inherently dislike, but in terms of the most fucking bops, I gotta say Black Sunday. My gosh, they really found their target audience here. They found exactly what type of sound they were going for, this like gritty, dark, weird type of sound that's all about, you know, murder, the inner city, the crime life, and all the stuff that goes along with that. And I can see why Black Sunday is such a revered classic, and people who, you know, respect hip-hop really like this album. Some people find the Cypress Hill guys' like baby talk voice annoying, but I think it's fucking unique, and I really like how it meshes so well with the beats. He's able to just like blend in there with all these twisted lyrics about like, you know, knocking people off and doing tons of fucking drugs, and it's just like so absurdly cartoonishly indulgent to like a wild extent. But on the other hand, I think Cypress Hill deserves way more cred than they get oftentimes. They're a dang good group, and every one of their hits is like solid hip hop, just like, oh my gosh, it's really, really good. So I'm putting Black Sunday here just because what a flippin' album. If you're a hip-hop fan and you bump some Cypress Hill every now and again, you're missing the fuck out. Also, of course, it's great fucking stoner music, so if you light up those blunts, you know, this is the stuff to listen to. You're puffing on a blunt, Dr. Green Thumb, classic stoner hip-hop here. Okay, at 78, we got a pretty underrated one, Combustible Edison with I Swinger. This is some weird fucking music that only I think I'm into. I really like the lounge revival. I've been on record that I fucking hate the swing revival of the 90s. I think that shit's fucking obnoxious. But I like the lounge revival. Weirdly enough, I like this 60s airport tiki type instrumental shit that's just like relaxing and weirdly enthralling. I think Combustible Edison, what they were able to do with the lounge revival is really admirable, in that they were a non-ironic lounge revival group. They weren't doing it as a joke. They like seriously respected the canon of lounge music. In fact, if they hadn't come around, most people probably wouldn't even notice that like lounge music is a thing or bother to categorize it as such. But they classified themselves as like in the same vein as Henry Mancini and stuff. And every song on here is fun to listen to. It's an acquired taste, I'll say that. Like if you're not into fucking lounge music, you'll go in and you'll be like, what the fuck? It's not quite jazz. It's not quite exotica. It's like a weird kind. I mean, technically exotica is like a subgenre of lounge, but not all the ones on here are exotica. Not all of them can be like classified as jazz or pop or anything. It's just lounge. It's lounge. Lounge music's fucking underrated, and as a result, freaking Combustible Edison's underrated. And Icewinger's their best album, hands down. I don't really like the other two as much. Icwinger has the most variety, it's got the most bang for your buck, it's where it feels the least like a gimmick, and it feels like they're really putting out solid material. Millionaire's Holiday, Spy vs. Spy, just some great fucking hard-hitting do type shit. Just fucking bops through and through. If you like the 60s, if you like the 50s, if you like some smooth shit to drink to, I don't personally drink, but I imagine this is good drinking music, or just nice to pop on at a party in the background. If you have like a classy party, not like a raucous party, but like a very classy, smooth party, lots of suave people, this is the music to put on. It's fucking good. I like it. Alright, at 77, we got the Strawberry Alarm Clock with Incense and Peppermints. This is a classic, and it's one of those examples of psych rock that really goes underappreciated, while shit like the Beach Boys is propped up as great psych rock. Strawberry Alarm Clock is way fucking better. They commit way harder to the bit, and they never seem disingenuous or anything. It seems like this is legit a life they wanted to lead. So you got great tunes like Incense and Peppermints, Hummin' Happy, which I reference in one of my songs for some reason, even though it's not that good. It's kind of goofy as fuck. But that's what you get with psych rock. Some of it is goofy as fuck, and I like that. That's an inherent bonus that adds to its charm. The Strawberry Alarm Clock have a very unique sound. It can't exactly be compared to like the Electric Prunes or something. It's very different from other psych rock. A lot of psych rock groups have a very unique sound in and unto themselves, but they aren't appreciated for it. And I think that fucking sucks, because Incense and Peppermints is an all-time classic, colorful, vibrant, tinged with the hues and tones of the 60s, just washed throughout with this gorgeous panoramic view of what was possible back then, with loads of acid and tons of shrooms and just the wildest possible music industry that the world's ever seen. It is a great example of why I fucking love psych rock. Shit like Incense and Peppermints is well worth a listen. It is Willy Wonka's candy factory of fun up in there, and you're gonna be smelling that incense and tasting those peppermints, yo. Okay, finally, for this installment, we've gone fast through these. We got Neil Young, Rust Never Sleeps, with, of course, Crazy Horse. Rust Never Sleeps is the only Neil Young album on this list. Neil Young obviously has a hell long 50-plus ass album discography. He's one of the most prolific musicians of all time, so tons of his albums are fucking awesome. But I'm gonna put Rust Never Sleeps here. More than anything else, it perfectly encapsulates what makes Neil Young so appealing to so many people. His status as the so-called godfather of grunge, his sort of interesting relationship with rock as a genre, his waning relevance that he felt when he was creating this album, and his observance of the evolution of rock towards something that he couldn't quite comprehend because he was a relic, or at the very least he felt like a relic of an earlier time. As it turns out, his legacy is so enduring, and he's so encapsulating of rock as a genre. He's lived through so much that he'll never be outdated. Like, he felt like he was going to be outdated on this. But for what it's worth, Rest Never Sleeps stands as a really, really great record of a very, very clearly dark period in Neil Young's life, where he was just feeling like, oh my gosh, these kids these days, they understand shit that I don't. Ironically, Neil Young ended up creating what many consider to be a very early and great grunge album that predates Nirvana. And of course, it's got Hey Hey My My, which he collabed with Devo. And there's just so many great aspects to Rest Never Sleeps. It's a very dreary album in many ways, but there's a sort of charm to it. And I'm going to put it here, it's a very interesting listen for Neil Young. Yeah, and that's saying something, because every Neil Young release is fucking interesting. But he really hit a new level of, like, interesting here. Okay, well, that's it for the initial installment of my top 100 albums of all time, numbers 100 through 76. Next time we're going through numbers 75 to 51. So tune in then and check it out, and you might be surprised by what we have in store, or you might not. If you've paid attention to my music taste for some time, then you probably know what's in store. But nonetheless, I hope this list sort of gives you an idea as to what influences my music, what my musical overview consists of, and hopefully there's some fun surprises and some stuff that you haven't heard before. But hopefully there's also a lot of albums that you enjoy and that you respect and get a lot out of too. I'm trying to make this one a real crowd pleaser for everyone and show that, hey, my taste in music probably aren't too different from yours, but there are going to be some albums that you might not find as palatable. Anyway, yeah, that's the first installment of my top 100 list of favorite albums of all time. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I'll see you again real soon for the next installment. Spadow.